Convocations. I have just a couple of announcements for those who are enrolled in the class before brief introductions to our panel today. Welcome everybody to Convocations. Today we have, in fact, the Office of Student Disabilities here at Snow College and a panel of students who receive accommodations through their office will be addressing us today. Our student experts will share their experiences about what it's like to have a disability here at Snow College, and they will speak to life on campus and share their perspectives about about what they would like people to know. And also, of course, like other presentations, there will be time at the end for questions, so think of those while the panel is going on. So let's please give a round of applause for our panel today.
We're super excited to be here today. My name is Cidney Shinsel, and I'm the Director of Disability Services. Definitely the stars of the show today is this group right up here. But I just wanted to start off by sharing a little bit of disability history here in the United States so that you've got a little bit of perspective as to where we've been and how far we've come. There's always room for improvement, of course. But if you look back here at the very beginning, between 1867 and 1974, there were a number of laws on the books that have retrospectively been called the ugly laws. Those laws were written to keep people with disabilities and indigent people off the streets. So if there was a person with a physical disability or any kind of disability that was visible and they were seen by individuals, they could be arrested and incarcerated. They could be fined. But really, the goal was, hey, if you don't look like a typical or normal person, we don't want you out. So that was between 1867 and 1974. In 1935, there were 33 states across the nation that had laws where they actually involuntarily sterilized women who were feeble-minded, insane, epileptic, deaf, blind, or physically disabled. So what's interesting with that is there's somebody else gets to put that label on somebody, right? You can say, oh, she's feeble-minded. And so that person would be sterilized, which is terrible. Like, okay, we don't want disability to exist, and so this is what we're going to do. We don't want to pass it on to future generations. So there were 33 states in 1935 where that was the case. In 1974, finally, the last of the ugly laws was repealed, and so that was no longer an acceptable practice. I would say that we still have some things sometimes that might come off that way that still exist, but we're making progress. In 1975, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed, and basically what that afforded was a free and appropriate public education for any student between the ages of 0 and 18. So even if your child had a disability, they could go to school and learn and participate and do all the same things that other students do, which is fabulous. Now, March 12, 1990, there was legislation that was getting ready to be passed, and that was called the Americans with Disabilities Act. There were a number of individuals who were worried that that act would not pass. And so they went to the capital of the United States and they protested. So there were a number of people in wheelchairs, and actually there were over 1,000 participants that went, but a number of people in the wheelchairs decided, hey, I'm gonna put this wheelchair aside and I'm gonna crawl up the Capitol building. At that point in time, there were no ramps. There was no way for a person with a physical disability to get into the building. And so if you ever want to see videos that will really move you, go on to Google and look up Capitol Crawl. And just watching the sheer determination of some of those individuals is really moving. It's like, how can I, as a person in this country, not be included? I want to be a part of everything that's going on. So luckily, July 26, 1990, they actually did pass the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is the first civil rights law that was ever passed, like, in the world. So it protects people with disabilities in workplace, in schools, in society in general. And really the big focus back then was more about physical buildings and being able to access physical buildings. Well, since 1990, we've had a ton of digital accessibility stuff that's happened, right? Like everything that you want access to, you can go on the web, you can look it up, you can use apps, but if those apps are not accessible, then a person with a disability cannot use those apps. So this law went into effect the 24th of April of 2024, saying, hey, here are the standards that we need to abide by. And really what that means is that all of the programming that happens for the web and for apps has to be programmed in such a way that a user who is not able to use their hands could use a mic to navigate the keyboard and get to where they needed to be able to access the material. Closed captioning is supposed to be on every video that's out there. We're still not there. It's a work in progress and always will be, I'm afraid. But that is the latest thing, the biggest thing. This is by no means comprehensive. There have been a lot of things that have happened within disability. Really, I don't want to take any more time from these wonderful people here, because like I said, they are the stars of the show. And I'm going to have each person introduce themselves, share what their disability is, and a little bit about how that affects them in their lives. And we'll start right here. No, we've got to get it on the mic.
Hello. There we go. Sorry about that. So my name is Trex. I have been a worker for the Disability Office for the past 3 years underneath Cidney and Julie, who's down here in the front. I have been diagnosed with ADHD, and if you guys have any questions about that or the office, feel free to ask me about it.
Hi, my name is Hope. I have autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old. I just recently finished my Associates of Science here at Snow College, and I now currently work as a paraprofessional at a school for children with disabilities, intellectual and physical.
My name is Izzy Messerly. I have dyslexia, and I'm a wrestler in Richfield.
Okay, epic. Hi, my name is Jay. I am diagnosed with autism, and yeah, I'm a music major, and this is my second year here at Snow College.
Hi, I'm Kimber Reeve. I am actually hard of hearing, so partially deaf. And I'm here for generals and just going to school and see how it works out.
My name is Lily Allred, and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 15, and I'm a freshman here at Snow, and I'm currently on a student leadership team working with the Counseling Center.
My name is Eva Cavanis. I actually have a disability for every color of the disability flag, but I think the two that affect me the most as a student are ADHD and chronic vestibular migraine, and I am a music major here at Snow College.
Hi, my name's Helen Wheeler. I have a learning disability, and just one way that affects me personally is it just takes me a little bit longer to do assignments. Those learning disabilities are specifically with reading and math.
Hi, my name is Oliver Hansen. I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder as well as general anxiety disorder, and I am a freshman here at Snow. I transferred from Utah Tech University, and I'm a music major student.
Hi, my name is Gage Bentley. I've got spina bifida, hydrocephalus. I've been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and I'm currently going to school to be a recreational therapist.
I'm Fernanda, and I have POTS, which is a heart condition, which it makes it really hard to go to school sometimes, or get up, or get out of bed, or things like that. What makes it really hard to do assignments, and that's really hard for me throughout the school. And I'm an elementary school major here at Snow.
At this point in time, we'd really just like to open it up to the audience for questions so that they can answer any questions that you might have. We have a question there in the back. This side, yeah. We've got a runner.
I was just gonna say, what makes it easier for you guys to like feel connected to other people around you here at Snow or anywhere in your life? Like, what makes it easier for you to be involved and to feel like you're part of this community?
For me, one of the biggest things to help me feel connected to, like, feel like a part of a community stems through education, because a big part of why sometimes I have felt in the past ostracized from my peers and by my teachers is because of the lack of understanding and education surrounding disabilities. And so when people are aware and it isn't necessarily straightforwardly said, but when people are educated about it, it like removes some of the like uncomfortable feelings people have.
I think for me, I think just people being, how do I word this? Just being like open to learning new things and open to new ideas, because some of the like struggles I've had in the past with peers have been, you don't look like you have this, so you must not have it, and that is the main thing that just makes, if people are more understanding, then it helps me connect with people.
For me, with my dyslexia, it's really hard to like communicate over the phone. So there's a lot of people that think that I'm bilingual, even though I'm not. And so it's been really nice to have friends and family that I surround myself with people that can understand, and then they're able to show that like dyslexia is not a problem. She's really smart and everything like
that. As someone who, I have ADHD, but I don't think I've ever been seriously ostracized as that before in the past, but I've worked in the office and I talk to these students every day. I feel like it's just important to know that they're people and look at them and just treat them like they are normal. There's nothing at all different really about them, and if they say anything about it, then you can just be, oh, all right, that's cool, man, let's keep talking. Does that answer your question?
So question, how do you manage to get assignments done with your disabilities? How do you manage to work through them?
So for me, I have ADHD, which makes that like difficult because you never want to focus on your assignments. But what I have to do is I have to like set a timer for 15 minutes and dedicate that 15 minutes to working on an assignment, and then take a 5-minute break so that I have like a distraction time. I can just do whatever I want for 5 minutes. I have to set a timer for that as well, and then I have to go back in and set another timer for 15 minutes, etc., until I get all of my assignments done. And I also have to like put reminders in my calendar like, hey, this assignment is going to be due tomorrow, so you need to do it today, because if you don't do it today, you're not going to do it tomorrow, and you're not going to get it in. And then I also have to communicate a lot with my professors, like, hey, I can't really do this assignment because of these different problems that I have. So what are your options that you have for me to make it easier? Like, what can I do to still get the assignment done?
So, like I said, I was hard of hearing and I'm deaf, so I missed a lot of things, so I can't hear and like verbalize things. So through the accommodation to the disability,
office, they have helped me with my interpreter. Two times in the front, actually, here to help me out to understand. And because ASL is actually my first language, I have that to learn. Sorry, I have ASL so my interpreter can like have. So I have my ASL interpreter to help me out to listen, have. I do hate public speaking, please. Patient with me. So I have my ASL interpreter to help me to understand what's going on in group setting and stuff, to help me not miss things, to understand what people are saying and stuff. So that's also helped me with school-wise and education-wise. And also I have apps to like speech to text, also help with lecture and stuff. So it's a lot of little things to help me with that. So.
Epic. Okay. One of the biggest things for me is that I struggle with executive dysfunction, and so it's hard to like start assignments and then finish it out the whole way. And so one of the biggest strategies for me is that I have to remind myself as a disabled person that it's okay to ask for help. And so relying on my fellow peers has been a huge help to me of like, oh, if I sit down and I dedicate my time with someone else to do it and like they are there doing it at the same time as me, it is 100% easier to do assignments.
Got a question right over here.
Hi, so how would someone go about seriously inquiring getting diagnosed with ADHD or autism?
She asked how you get diagnosed with something like ADHD or autism. I actually only got diagnosed last year because even though for years and years and years people have been telling my parents that I am very, very neurodivergent, my mom, who is also neurodivergent, was like, oh, there's no way. And then finally, I had these two psychologists come to my house and they were like, dude, you need to get her tested for everything. And we're actually still not done with that process because getting diagnosed with ADHD and autism as an adult is so much harder than as a kid. So I'm still like actively undergoing testing for autism and stuff, and it's really complicated. But the best way to do that is to reach out to a psychologist. There's not a lot of psychologists in Utah, so it's harder in Utah, but there are some psychologists who travel to Utah like once or twice a year to help with diagnoses. So what you need to do is you need to set up an appointment with that kind of a psychologist and specifically request that kind of testing, and that will help. A good way to know if you should be tested is there are online tests, not just some random online tests, like don't go on like BuzzFeed, but there are like online tests from psychology clinics that recommend and tell you if you should be tested, so you don't have to waste a bunch of money getting tested. And if you take those prerequisite tests and then reach out to a psychologist, you should be able to get diagnosed within like a year or so.
And just to add to that, we can also make referrals to workforce services, and they can help with the testing if they believe a student possibly has a disability. Usually if a student had a 504 or an IEP in high school, they were diagnosed in high school or elementary school throughout the system. And so that's already kind of in place, but sometimes students kind of fall through the cracks, and when that happens, definitely working with workforce services, because being tested for a disability, if you've got the full, they do what's called a psychoeducational evaluation, that can cost like $2,000 to $3,000, and that's a lot of money that most students don't have. So, and absolutely, you can always come to our office and we can get you set up with the right folks to do that.
Which is on the second floor of the GSC. I'll be there.
Wait, what is the hardest, what is the hardest thing that you guys face every day?
For me, it's mostly feeling sick every day. Like, I have horrible migraines, nausea all the time, to the point where I can't go to class. And that makes it really hard. So what they do to help me is that they put me in a little medication and a little like supplements and things that can help me with the nausea and the migraines and everything that comes with it.
I have to say my heart goes out to those of you who have a disability and have physiological challenges. As I said, I have autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 2. So for me, that was 19 years ago. I was diagnosed by a neurologist. So piggybacking off of your previous question about how you can get diagnosed, neurologists are also a great source. Most insurances can cover neurologists, but I would say my biggest struggle is that most people, when they look at me and I tell them I have autism, they go, "Do you really?" I would have never guessed, because I think many, as you saw, many heads shook. Most of us, and again, emphasis on the most of us, some of us do, we don't look like we have a disability. When I walk in, someone says, "You have autism?" "No way." And I have to stare at them. I'm like, yeah, I do. You know, I don't know how autism is supposed to look like. I don't know if you want me to start running around on my toes or start verbal stimming or something. But I don't look like I have autism, but I have quirks. I am so disgustingly awkward when it comes to one-on-one conversations. It's hideous, it's heinous, and it's so bad. But if I am speaking to a panel, it's a completely different ballgame. And so for me, the biggest struggle, and I think a struggle that many neurodivergent people have, young and old, is not looking like we have a disability, but then someone starts talking to you and they're thinking, what is wrong with them? Like, why are they saying that? Why is she so awkward? Why is she not looking me in the eyes? Why is she not engaging in physical contact? Why does she want to do this? Why does she need to take 5-minute breaks? You know, there's all these questions that come to mind. And so at the end of the day, this is just kind of a precursor. If you know someone that's awkward or has autism or ADHD, please don't make them feel weird. We already feel weird enough. I mean, I can't tell you how many friendships I've had. As you can tell, pretty monotone voice. I have a very drawn countenance, and so when I talk to people, this is my happy face. So you can tell, birthdays are hellacious for my mother. She has no idea if I'm excited or not. So when I'm talking to someone, I say, "Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you." No part about me just said it was good to see you, but it is. So at the end of the day, how I look definitely defers people on how they treat me. And so it's difficult, and I know I've been talking for quite a minute, but I definitely can say I represent quite a few people who are high functioning when we say we don't look like we have a disability, but we do. So just give us the benefit of the doubt if you can.
I think the hardest thing for me is just kind of with autism, just getting kind of like overstimulated or overwhelmed can be a hard thing. Sometimes like it'll just like sometimes like if it's been a long day, if I've been masking or something, it's just like I can't do my assignments at night because I'm like overwhelmed, and that's probably the hardest thing. But something that helps with that is just kind of like letting myself feel what I'm feeling. I don't know, just being open with, like, honest with myself about how I'm feeling is probably one of the main things that helps.
Well, what was exactly the question again? I want to make sure I answer it well.
What is the hardest thing that you face every day?
So, I really like your point of saying every day, because, I mean, I think for all of us, there's some days that are better, some days that are worse. But if you want to talk about consistency, especially with depression, that it removes my will to do things, to even exist at times. And so trying to find the meaning, the will to be able to even just get out of bed and to exist, to go talk with people. Because I'm very introverted, and talking with people drains me very quick, and a lot of the time I don't see a point in doing it. Not to like diss on anybody, but for me it just doesn't help me very much. I do see a high amount of value in being able to do like group work. That's been said before, like to be able to get assignments done and things. That's really helpful to be able to work in, you know, a study group or something. But trying to find the strength to be able to get out of bed, you know, when everything seems like against you, when it's not working, especially like, because we all have things in place to help us succeed, but there's also times when we're not succeeding, you know, to the best of our ability and everything. Even if it is to the best of our ability, it's really daunting when you know, the best I can do is, you know, just complete one assignment a day, you know, if that. And another thing too is with the health problems, because I have IBS as well, and that's irritable bowel syndrome. So I've got things like acid reflux that makes it so I can't eat. And then I've got a whole bunch of stomach problems that makes it so it's hard to sleep. And that can really affect me for the upcoming days and things. Because if you've ever pulled an all-nighter, you know it's hard to recover from that. Well, if you're consistently doing all-nighters and you can't sleep, that's even harder. So that's one that's pretty consistently hard.
Awesome. Okay. So for me, I was pretty late diagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed until I was almost out of high school. And one of the hardest things for me is that because my whole life I spent it just feeling othered, but not necessarily knowing why. And so I hold myself to pretty high expectations because of that. And one of the hardest things that I face every day is more so of a mental game of, I am disabled, and although a lot of the disabilities that I have are invisible, that doesn't take away from them, and it's okay to give myself a break. Especially, I have a panic disorder, and so sometimes I've had to reframe my mindset per se to say, hey, it's okay to step outside of class, take a minute, and like recalibrate myself so I can actually go back and keep learning instead of just trying to think about more so the social aspect of it. But really what it comes down to is I think I need to be kinder to myself, and something that helps me be kinder to myself is when other people show me kindness.
For me, it's not comparing myself to other people. I compare myself a lot. Like, this person's doing this great, or they just got done with a 10-page paper in one sitting, and I'm struggling just to get through the first page because I'm trying to spell a word right, one single word right. And so I've got to be more patient on myself, and that's something that I've had to work through, even with my accommodations. They can't be like, you got to be, the accommodations aren't like, hey, you're going to be patient on yourself, here you go, here's a free ticket. It's a ongoing thing every single assignment, every single class. When I don't make it to class and I don't know what's going on, it's like, shoot, I missed that class, I can never miss it again. No, I need to be patient with myself and be like, no, they have accommodations, they have this video for you to watch. And so stepping back for me is probably the hardest thing, because it's like, I want to be the best in the class, I want to try my hardest, but sometimes I fail. And so sometimes it's like, I want to be the best, but I can't. That's okay.
So what level of attention would you prefer to see? Because it's not always right to ignore a disability, but if you pay too much attention and put too much emphasis on it, it can get awkward, and it just doesn't seem right. What is that correct level, you would say?
I think it depends on the person, what they're comfortable with. Some people, they might want like you to just say like, oh, I have, like for me, it's like I have this disability, but that doesn't mean that I can't like interact with you. Some people might say like, I have this disability, it might make it harder for me to interact with you, please be patient with me. I think it's just kind of like gauging the individual person's wants and needs.
Epic. I think the most, why have I started saying epic? Sorry. I think the most, important thing to remember is that all disabled people, whether or not they share the same disabilities, are all people first, and every disability looks slightly different for everyone. So it's important to remember to approach people as people, and again, personal preferences, all of that stuff applies because of how different disabilities can present and how challenges are different.
Yeah, it really does depend on the person. And I think one thing is, as far as like attentiveness goes, most people won't mind if you ask. If you're like, hey, I'm in this class with you, and I've noticed you're like you've talked about this a couple times. Is there anything I can specifically do to help you? Do you not want to talk about it? Like anything like that. Like, I think the biggest thing for me as well is what kind of attention is being paid. 'Cause sometimes, like growing up or even just at school now, I'll be like stimming or something and somebody will be like, what's wrong with you? That's like not the right attention to pay to a disability, right? So it's like you are paying attention. You are realizing that I am doing something, but it's not helpful, right? As compared to like, I don't know, like you can even like laugh with a person about it. I make jokes about things all the time because that's kind of how I cope with things, which is kind of a bad thing. But me and my friends, who every single one of them has ADHD or autism or both, we all just like joke about it all the time. Like, oh, all of us have a matching vocal stim, so my entire friend group says the same thing all the time. And things like that are okay, for me at least. But again, just ask a person. Just be like, hey, like, what are you comfortable with? What do you want? And I mean, honestly, that even applies to being like, autism is beautiful, as compared to being like, oh, this is something that's really hard that you go through every day. Yeah, no, like so many people think that being like, oh, this is your superpower and it's something that makes you amazing is like a really good thing. But some days you're just like, actually, this is really hard and it does not feel like a superpower. It is a mental disability where my brain does not work the same as your brain. So as much as, yeah, I can be really, really smart at some things, I can also really, really be dumb at some things. And I don't want you to feel like I don't want to like have you set the standard that I have to be a superhuman all the time because of my disability. Like that's not how it works, you know? And so those kinds of things aren't as helpful as most people think, I think as well. Yeah.
So one other thing as well is, especially when it comes to the mental health realm, I have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. So it's very easy for me to be switched day to day, hour to hour, event to event. And so it can be challenging sometimes for people to work with me because it can be, like a toss of the dice. You're not sure what you're going to be dealing with. And so in consideration to that, you can talk with the person. The best thing to do is ask questions. If you don't want to just like start saying things, and applying it to us, it's more if you ask questions, that's better because then we can express how we are feeling, how we are doing. But yeah, sometimes it is, at least for me, it's flip of a switch sometimes, and so it can be difficult. But if you understand what's going on and allow me to communicate that, then you can understand what you can do to help with that. And it can be different in different situations, but being able to pick up on those things is a really good skill because I'm married and my wife and I often talk about what I've dealt with and things, and the easiest way for me to calm down in like major depressive episodes and things is by talking to her about it when she asks me those questions, so that I can express how I'm feeling rather than keeping it inside of me.
So one thing that I started doing in high school is I would talk to my parents when I needed help, and being able to talk to somebody is just the best thing that you can have as somebody with a disability. And I don't think I would have made it through high school if I didn't have my parents to talk to.
For me, I'm fairly new in this world of disabilities. I got diagnosed with POS 2 years ago. And during my senior year in high school, that's when I started getting sick. And I didn't know what it was for a whole year because I was being misdiagnosed with anxiety. And they were like, oh, you're just a woman, you're fine. I was like, what? And something that helped a lot, it was having a group of people that was there for me. They didn't let my POTS define me. So I'm a really bubbly person and super happy, and And I don't let that change. So being able to notice something that's invisible is kind of hard, but just being there for that person, just being able to talk about it.
I think it boils down to two things. The first one's being kind. Obviously, never gonna be perfect in anything, but if you don't want to directly address it, then just be nice to them and kind of gauge where they're kind of at and go off of that. And then the other part of it would be, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself talking to somebody if you're noticing something, right, and you don't want to talk about it. Because when you start to put pressure on yourself, you start to have a different body language and you start to communicate differently and stuff like that, and then it makes things awkward. I've done it several hundred times, it feels like, right? Just don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Just treat them like a person and just be nice, so.
I wonder if there are things that your professors have done that have helped you succeed in classes.
One that's been really helpful is having them record the classes has been very, very helpful. Like, even if I can't make it to class and I'm not doing my best that day, or I'm like, I went to your class, I sat there, and I didn't get a single thing out of it today. And that happens a lot. And like, it's because we're just trying to take everything in a big, huge mouth chunk and not little bites. And so having the recordings has been really, really helpful because you can take it in little chunks and be like, oh, I forgot about that, or that, I can connect to that. But that's been something that's been really, really helpful for me.
Something that helps me a lot with my professors is that they communicate with me what happens. Or they send me emails like, we did this in class today. So something that happens to me with my condition is that I pass out and I lose consciousness of who I am, who I was in the last 24 hours. So I don't know anything that happens. There are times I go to my professors that I'm like, so I passed out yesterday and I don't remember a thing that happened. And them being able to be like, oh, we did this, we're working this assignment, you said this. My memories do come back, but they take time to come back. And my professors being able to be there and just send me an email, or we did this recording in class, you can try it again, it's totally okay, give me extra time, and that helps me a lot.
I think also just like professors who are willing to communicate with you and understand specifically what you're going through. Because the disability office like sends your professors an email and they're like, hey, this student has these accommodations. And sometimes that's as far as a professor will go, and they'll just be very strict. These are your accommodations. I'm never going to communicate with you about how something's going on a specific day, anything like that. And that's just the way it is. And some professors try to like actually educate themselves. You're never required to tell a professor your disability or anything like that. But for me specifically, I've had two professors who just really, really try very hard to understand what I go through day to day. With chronic vestibular migraine, that means that I have severe light sensitivity, and sometimes I'm hard of hearing and I get like really bad tinnitus because of just like the way that my brain works. And so I can't show up to classes, like, unfortunately, decently frequently when they're in the morning, because I have migraines at least 15 out of 30 days every month. And basically, one of my professors, we've just made it a routine where I email her when I won't be able to show up to a class because I kind of know, and I'm like, hey, I can't make it to this class. What are we learning? What do I need to catch up on? And do you have any specific recommendations? And then she'll email me back and she'll be like, yeah, this is the chapter we worked on. I recommend you watch like these videos and it will help you. And then I can make up the work for that class and I can still pass the class. And I also had an actual exam this week. And I have some pretty severe allergies, so I actually went into anaphylactic shock this week. That's why my voice sounds like this. And I had a sight singing exam. That meant I had to use my voice. And I went in and I couldn't sing. And she was like, that's okay, we'll postpone the exam. So I was able to take it this morning instead because she's understanding and because she communicates with me. So honestly, even just having a professor who communicates and understands that your disability is not the same every single day. Some days you're gonna have so much fun in a class and you're gonna pay attention and you're gonna understand and it's gonna be amazing. And some days it's just gonna be like not possible. And a professor who gets that is the best kind of a professor.
I think just professors, like, because professors, like, I understand that you all are busy and sometimes you don't have time to, like, research each individual, like, to go into each individual student's, like, situation in depth and everything, but just being caring, like as long, like if you're, I found that professors who just care and want you to succeed are the most helpful in general. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I last year, one of my professors, she really took the time to, when I came and talked to her and I said, hey, I'm feeling nervous about this class. It's a hard class. I'm a little bit nervous about it, and I explained to her my kind of like anxieties about the class, and she said, okay, let's just make it a rule that if like you can't come to class, if you can't do an assignment or keep up with the schedule, because it was a really strict scheduled class, that you just send me an email and I will be able to work with you this semester. And I 100% guarantee I would have failed the class without her working with me through my disability.
For me, personally, is a couple things. First thing is allowing your professors allowing you to take pictures of the whiteboard, whether that be like notes or like a slideshow. Me personally, with my learning disability, usually sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to write notes, as well as gather information. So definitely taking pictures like of notes, the professors allowing us to take pictures of notes has helped me a lot. I feel one other thing that's also been mentioned before that also helps me a lot is professors recording lectures. For me personally, that's helped me a lot because usually when it comes to lectures, it takes me longer because of my learning disability. It takes me longer to process information. So having that lecture recorded helps me, so I can go back to it and maybe get some information that I may have missed from it. So those are just some things that have personally helped me. So.
I think for me, like being able to move, which is weird, I was like very hyperactive sometimes, and a lot of times it's in my head. Being able to fidget, which I carry fidget toys in my backpack all the time. Well, actually, yeah, at all times. And there are even points where if I'm under pressure, I need to like get up and move while listening and talking, and I understand that's not going to be applicable in all places and times like that, but I've had many professors allow me to do that in the back of the class. I have an issue of when I take tests, I have to talk to myself, and so we have our own testing center, just so you guys know if you are interested, come talk to us about that. And I schedule myself for times that I'm by myself, and I've had coworkers like laughing at me because I'm yelling at myself at the testing center. So if there's just built up energy that I need to let out, just being able to find a way that they can work that out is really helpful.
I have a younger brother that has been diagnosed with autism, and he really struggles with controlling his anger and communicating with other people. And so I really struggle with approaching him. I want to help him succeed because he's been having some troubles at school, and I'm really running out of ideas on what I can do to help him. So my question is, what is something that your familiars or people close to you have done that has helped you in school and in general in life?
So as someone with autism, sometimes when people are talking to me when I'm in a bit of an overwhelmed state, it just adds to the overwhelmed, and it makes kind of my brain shut off almost. And so what helps for me is that when people lay things out in a like kind of a clear and organized manner, or like give options instead of leaving open-ended questions, especially when I'm already overwhelmed, my brain can't quite process a lot of option or a lot of information. So having those options is really, really helpful for me. And always just be patient when I am having a hard time understanding because of like auditory processing issues, or like just general overstimulation. I think that a lot of people understand that, you know, trying to help is, you know, that means a lot when I can tell that someone's trying to help. But those are some things that, despite the good intentions, can add more overwhelm instead of helping like diffuse the situation.
Overstimulation is often what causes people with neurodivergency to get angry in situations like that. And honestly, diffusing a situation is the most helpful thing, at least in my opinion. So just like making sure that like the situation is no longer overstimulating. If that means turning off the lights or taking the person to another room and just letting them breathe for a minute. I got severely overstimulated the other night actually, and my friends just like literally like took me over to their apartment instead of the apartment we were at, and we just sat there and just breathed, and everything was quiet, and they turned the lights off, and they didn't say literally anything. They just let me just like calm down, and then I could talk to them. And so giving someone space to desensitize themselves so they don't like feel anything like overwhelming their senses anymore, and then having the conversation and then talking to them can be really helpful.
I have to say my exact job is helping people like your family member work through exactly what they might be working through. My job professionally is a paraprofessional, and I work with children aged from 7th grade all the way until 12th grade, some younger. And the biggest thing that we emphasize, it's called NCI training. When you are approaching someone who is neurodivergent and you can tell is in a state of distress, whether it's socially or intellectually, the first thing you want to do is assess the level of stress that they are at, because obviously about to throw a tantrum, throw a fit, just depending on their age, versus someone who's just slightly uncomfortable. The approach to those are obviously a lot differently. So approaching, you know, if it's a brother, a sister, a cousin, we'll just say brother in this instance. If I see my brother and I see that they are quite literally about to throw some form of emotional tantrum, then I look around me, what's going on? And I think, what may be causing them to be distressed? And if I'm understanding your question correctly, the struggle that your family member is having is at school. So you're not always seeing it. And so I think what's important is, especially if a child is neurodivergent and they are in a mainstream school, they are going to be very overstimulated. They may feel ostracized. They may feel separate from their group. Typically, mainstream schools that do not specialize in neurodivergent children are meant for verbal thinkers. Verbal thinkers are your math majors. They are your science majors. They are the people who think 1, 2, 3, 4. They think sequentially. Many times they do not have social struggles. Many of us would be considered visual thinkers. We need to move around. We need to have something in front of us to visualize, to fully understand the information. So if your brother or sister or family member is a visual thinker and they are in verbal thinking situations, they're probably very confused and very overwhelmed as to why they are not understanding the curriculum and the social status that is given to them. Why am I not fitting in? Why am I not understanding 1 + 1 = 2 when the student next to me is understanding this? So approaching your sibling or your cousin or whoever it is and just seeing what state of crisis they're at. And first and foremost, letting them understand that they are in a safe and supported environment. Sometimes that is a pull-out environment. Sometimes that's not the option. Sometimes you're in a grocery store and you have this person who is just losing their mind. And you can't always take them out. You can't always take them out of a movie theater or in the middle of a lecture. And so letting them know, okay, this is the situation. I am noticing this, and then you list whatever you're noticing. If we wanted to say a hypothetical situation, you'd say, I am noticing that you are breathing really heavily, and your eyes are looking around the room. Is it safe for me to assume that you might feel overwhelmed? Are you feeling frustrated? If that's the case, I am here to help. And letting them know in a very calm and clear voice, I am here to help. And then you let them breathe, let that sink in. So-and-so, if whatever their name is, I am here to help. We can either stay here and we can calm down where we're at, or we can go to a separate area and find a way for you to calm down. Would you like to stay here, or would you like to move? Giving them 2 clear options. I'm sorry, this is a very long explanation. This is a very delicate and detailed science, but giving them 2 options. Would you like to go here or do this? And give them a second. Some people have longer response times, so understanding if they don't answer right away, that's okay. Give them a second to answer. And when they finally answer, I'd like to stay here, or I'd like to have a second to go somewhere else, take them to that alternative location or where they're at. There are grounding techniques that are amazing. Okay, I want you to focus on 5 things that you see in front of you. I want you to focus on 4 things that you hear, and you go down all the different areas of stimuli and break them down. If it's in a separate pull-out area, just let them know, hey, there's no stress. Let's go for a walk. Let's go hang out. Let's talk. Many of my students that I work with are high schoolers, but they operate at a junior high level. So the idea of someone talking down to them is very disrespectful. That's never something that you want to do. So just understanding where that person is at. So if I'm with one of my high schoolers, say, hey, let's go take a walk. Come on. And then if they continue to throw a tantrum, be like, no, let's go take a walk. And we go and take a walk. And I just ask them random distracting questions. What are you doing today? Hey, what are you doing after school? Hey, you know what, spring break's coming up. Do you have any fun activities planned? Distracting them from the sensory. And once you feel like they're in a place of just maybe slight discomfort, say, hey, talk to me about what happened. What's going on? That, to me, has been some of the best. It's actually the strategy most schools will employ in special education courses is the NCI training, which is actually free. If any of you are interested, through the Autism Foundation, there's a free 40-hour training that prepares you to be an RBT, a registered behavior technician. I know 40 hours is a lot, but it is quite literally teaching you exactly how to handle these situations, how to handle family members of all ages who are neurodivergent. Again, I know this is a very long answer, but if you have further questions after, I would love to answer them if you have any more.
Awesome. I think we're out of time, but panel's awesome, right?
Yeah, let's give a round of applause for our panel today, and I'm sure all of them will be, many of them will be happy to spend some time if you have personalized questions.